My friend, this is it. Tottenham Hotspur just suffered one of the most devastating defeats in nearly 90 years. 3-0 at home against Nottingham Forest in a match that was essentially an early relegation final. And the result was an absolute nightmare. But look, throughout this video, I'm going to give you all the details, all the behind-the-scenes information, everything that's happening inside the club, what could happen during the international break, and why the situation is serious, but not yet over. Before that, though, we need to talk about a number that dropped like a bomb. Opta's supercomputer has already updated Tottenham relegation odds after this defeat, and the figure is not pretty. So stay with me until the end, pay close attention to everything, and then tell me in the comments what you think the club needs to do right now. We are in the final stretch of the Premier League season, where every single point is worth its weight in gold in the battle for survival. Tottenham head into this international break sitting 17th, 1 point above the relegation zone, in a position that no Spurs supporter could have imagined at the start of the campaign. The club has already changed managers, bringing in Igor Tudor as interim back in February, but the results simply haven't come. The sporting, institutional, and financial pressure is now at a breaking point, and decisions cannot be delayed much longer. That's exactly where we're diving in right now. On Sunday, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium hosted Nottingham Forest in a match that sources close to the club had internally described as the most important game of the season. Supporters took to the streets before kickoff, creating an atmosphere of rare, raw passion. And for about 30 minutes, the team responded. After that, what followed was one of the most deflating performances in recent memory, ending in a 3-0 result that represents the club's worst stretch in nearly 9 decades. The problem wasn't just the scoreline, it was how the defeat unfolded. Spurs genuinely dominated large portions of the first half. Matheus Tel was the standout, producing the most dribbles, the most ambition, the most flair on the pitch. The team created 8 corners in the opening 30 minutes. Richarlison came agonizingly close to opening the scoring with a back-post header. But then came the cruelty of football. In the final seconds of the first half, Igor Tudor, who had done almost nothing all game, arrived completely unmarked at the back post from a Forest corner and headed home. A goal that is going to sting for a long time. At halftime, Tudor made 2 changes. Tudor and Lucas Bergvall came on for Mickey van de Ven and Jed Spence. The tactical decision was immediately questioned by a significant portion of the fanbase. The team shifted back to a 4-4-2 that stripped Spurs of any organized attacking structure, and Xavi Simons remained on the bench without ever getting the chance to change the game. What followed was a second half where Tottenham couldn't string 3 passes together, while Forest exploited every pocket of space. The second goal was a lesson in defensive disorganization. Hudson-Odoi went past Porro down the line, slid it across, and Gibbs-White finished completely free, with Tudor and Pape Sarr staring at each other, while the Forest midfielder walked into the space between them. Awoniyi added a third in the 87th minute to put the game beyond all doubt. The stadium spent much of the second half booing, and honestly, it was hard to argue with that reaction. Tudor was appointed interim in February and inherited a deeply difficult situation. But after this defeat, the club's worst run in 90 years, questions about his future have become unavoidable. Sources indicate there was a clear internal threshold within the club. A defeat against Forest would open the door for the board to formally reassess his position. With just 2 points separating Spurs from the bottom 3, time is not a luxury anyone at the club has right now. There is a section of the fanbase that argues Tudor cannot fairly be held responsible for an inheritance this heavy. He walked into a club in crisis, with an unbalanced squad and shattered confidence. Some make the case that another managerial change at this stage of the season would be more destabilizing than keeping him in charge until the end of the campaign. And that's not an unreasonable argument. Late-season managerial switches rarely produce the desired effect, and the fixture list doesn't wait for anyone to settle in. But the football on display is not convincing. The performances are getting worse, and the club needs answers right now, not in 3 weeks. So now I want to hear from you. Would you keep Igor Tudor in charge until the end of the season? Or is it time for yet another change? Do you think there's a name out there who could actually make a difference in this final stretch? Drop your opinion in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Now, we need to talk about the numbers. because the supercomputer has already run the calculations, and what it says about Tottenham relegation odds after the Forest defeat might surprise you. Immediately after the final whistle on Sunday, Opta, one of the most respected sports analytics companies in the world, updated their relegation probability models for every club involved in the survival battle. And the numbers for Tottenham are concerning, but they carry an important nuance that a lot of people are overlooking. According to Opta data, following the defeat to Forest, Tottenham now have a 23.33% chance of relegation this season. At first glance, that's an alarming figure, and it should alarm you. But compare it to West Ham, who sit 18th with a 58.75% probability of going down. Nottingham Forest, now 2 points and 1 place above Spurs, carry just an 11.6% chance of relegation. And Leeds, who have been quietly impressive, sit 15th with only a 6.38% chance of dropping into the championship. The table that matters right now: Leeds on 41.93 points, Forest on 40.61, Spurs on 38.87, and West Ham on 36.99. Tottenham head is above water, but the margin is razor thin. One bad result and one West Ham win can change everything. The one crumb of comfort from the weekend was Aston Villa 2-0 win over the Hammers, but as any Spurs supporter knows, you cannot build a survival campaign on other people's results. And this is the central point. The international break that starts now is not just a gap in the calendar, it's a decision window for Tottenham Football Club. Sources close to the situation indicate that the board will use these 2 weeks to formally evaluate Tudor's position. There was a clear timeline internally linked to the Forest result. The interim manager didn't just lose, he was tactically outclassed, and the performance raised serious questions about whether this group of players is being set up to succeed. The questions being asked at Hotspur Way right now are stark. Is there a manager available in the market who would take this job in these circumstances? And more importantly, is there anyone who could genuinely make a difference with so few games remaining? These are conversations that are happening inside the club as we speak. What the Opta data reveals beyond the raw percentages is this: Tottenham remaining fixtures are not impossible, and a 23% relegation probability means the club is still mathematically far more likely to stay up than go down. But momentum is terrible. The squad looks psychologically fragile, and confidence at every level of the club is at its lowest point in years. What the club desperately needs is clarity. Either Tudor receives full backing and a defined tactical direction for the games that remain, or the decision to change is made in the next few days, not the night before the next fixture. Uncertainty and internal noise at this stage of the season is the worst possible scenario. Players need to know who they're playing for and what system they're being asked to execute. That said, it's worth noting that some analysts are reading the 23% figure as cautious optimism rather than panic. After all, 77% probability of survival is not nothing. Opta own model points to West Ham having a significantly harder run-in than Tottenham, and there are fixtures remaining where Spurs, if they find any semblance of form, can collect points. There is a version of this where the Tottenham situation resolves itself through West Ham collapse rather than a Spurs revival. But depending on that without taking action would be a historic mistake. So I want to know, with a 23% chance of relegation and the international break upon us, are you feeling more optimistic or more pessimistic about Tottenham's survival chances? And do you think the club will make a decision on Tudor's future before the next round of fixtures? Tell me here in the comments, I'll be reading every one of them. See you in the next video.